Hi, and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to the podcast all about the things that it takes to be a professional musician, aside from actually playing your instrument, which we're going to take as a given. It's a never-ending process. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, but we're here to talk about some other bits and bobs, you know what I mean? So today's episode has been inspired actually by a few different followers over on Instagram. And one in particular that sparked this. So it's from a lovely, lovely man named Mike Tuppen. I'm actually going to read you what he sent me, and I was like, right, I'm going to speak on this. So he said to me, I've written it down and everything. The worst thing when I was younger was making a mistake. I know many people who are quite literally paralysed by this specific fear. I wonder if that's a common fear amongst performers or anyone in general, and how it could be overcome. Now, I love this take. I think, first of all, Mike, thank you for inspiring this. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable, because it's difficult sometimes to admit when, things are worrying you or they might be affecting you in such a way. Let me be the first to say, the fear of making a mistake has informed so much of my life, not just musically, but personally as well. I'm working on it. Trust me, it's an ever-ending process. Well, not an ever-ending. Ever-ending? Does that even make sense? Never-ending probably makes sense, but it's not true. It's not that it's a never-ending process. It's just a process for me. And actually, I think the fear of making mistakes really constricts you in life and in music, but kind of accepting that mistakes will happen and leaning into them actually gives great feedback and great kind of connection almost with yourself, what you're doing, and allows you to sort of be present. I don't know whether any of that makes sense to you, but I'm going to kind of go a little bit in depth. I'll try as best I can, at least, just to talk on it and my experience with making mistakes, how I try to avoid it, and how, it just would not recommend. 1 star, 0 stars. So I'm really hoping that as you kind of sit there either watching or listening, depending on what platform you're on, what Mike has said has made you feel a little bit seen and resonates with you a little bit, because I think it's so easy to kind of like feel alone with stuff, especially when it comes to negative feelings and fears and mistakes. It is a common fear. It really, really is. And I think it's very easy to look at these things as a standalone thing, like the fear of making a mistake. But there's so much that goes into that as to why that fear exists and all that sort of stuff. So for me personally, like I say, I had a huge, huge fear of it. Mistakes to me were like the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And that was partly because of, nobody likes to make a mistake. That's normal human nature. Okay, fine. But for me, there were extra levels of it. For instance, I had very, very low self-esteem. Like, I would feel second best to everyone. Second best isn't the right term. I'd feel like last in the queue, because I felt like everyone was better than me, more worthy than me, deserved more than me. I really put myself down like you wouldn't believe for a long time, up until only very, very recently, in all honesty. So that there was that going on, which is kind of like the baseline of my existence, or has been for the longest time, which is, let me tell you, not a great basis to have. If you have these thoughts, I would highly suggest going and talking to a trained professional, because it has changed my life in a wonderful, wonderful way. Phenomenal. But I had that, and then also I was brought up with the belief that because I was a woman playing a quote-unquote male instrument, or in a quote-unquote male-dominated industry, that means that I would have to work extra hard. I would have to really never make a mistake, otherwise that would be used as an excuse to get me out of a situation. I always felt like I was on the back foot by virtue of just being a woman, or a girl, and that, whether that's true or not, that's how I felt at the time, and that drove me to always not just work harder, which is a positive, positive and a negative, because I think I overworked, but no, I know I overworked myself, but it kind of coupled with this fear of making a mistake, it was literally like, if I make a mistake, I will be punished. And the fact that it will lead to people going, oh yeah, she made a mistake because she's a woman. And that is, to this day, I'm like, no, absolutely not. But the reality is, it's completely irrational fear. It's completely irrational. At the end of the day, we're all human. We are all going to make mistakes. It happens. It's life. And again, it's not just musically. Obviously, that feels very high stakes, being on stage, maybe being in front of an audience, maybe. And, well, you'd hope if you are on stage, you are in front of an audience, hopefully. We can hope. But, yeah, it kind of... that fear is amplified, I think, because we can feel very vulnerable on stage. And whether that's emotionally, because we're performing something that's very emotional, or whether it's just, it is a scary thing being on stage in front of an audience. So you want to present well, you want to do the best you can. And to me at least, making a mistake was like one of the worst things that could happen. But look, let's be honest, it's going to happen. And when I've made mistakes in the past, let's say on stage, or mistakes have happened, because that's the other thing, you can't control everything. But when mistakes have happened, luckily, because of my lovely combination, I was going to say unique, it's not unique, my lovely combination of not feeling good enough and fear of making a mistake, I would, how do I say this? Send myself into anxious spirals to play out everything that could possibly go wrong on a gig and make a plan for what I would do if that thing happened. Now, there's going to be some people listening to this that will go, yep, that's me. And then there's going to be others going, you are unhinged. Yes, look. It was my coping mechanism. It's not so much now. I do have these moments still, but that was my way of coping with it. I would not recommend it. I don't think it's healthy. I think to a point, it's good to think through these things, but I was at a point where it was stifling me in life because I was so it kind of imposed these rules, I suppose, on, if X happens, then I must do Y, and if A happens, I must do B, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it makes life very rigid and very difficult to be in the moment, to be free. It negates the fact that sometimes mistakes can actually be a beautiful thing, and that if you're worried about making mistakes, that might sound absolutely ludicrous to you, but sometimes, who was it? I know it was Miles Davis. I remember he had some quote. Now, I don't know the quote, I can't remember it, but the gist of it was, and I'm probably butchering it, but there we are. It basically said that when he makes a mistake on stage, he will repeat the mistake as if it was meant to happen. And I think that's part of the reason he was such an innovative musician, was because he was doing things that no one was doing, and he was pushing boundaries. And it wasn't necessarily because he was intentionally doing that as well. Of course he was. But part of that definitely would have come from the mistakes, in inverted commas, that he was making. And then he would play them again and be like, I meant to do this. And I love that attitude. I don't think it's appropriate always, but hey, he's an artist, he can do what he wants. Let's face it, he's Miles Davis, he can literally do what he wants. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, because mistakes create, energy. And if you're playing, say, in a band or whatever, it kind of creates a moment, and what happens from that unexpected moment can create more interesting moments. And don't get me wrong, sometimes not so much. Sometimes it's like really harrowing when you make a mistake, and I'm pointing at myself right now because I'm thinking about particular mistakes that I've made on stage, and I feel so embarrassed isn't the right word. It's like I want the ground to swallow me up, because to me, often, like 99% of the playing that I do is as a job for artists, for other people. I'm playing their songs. I literally have one job, and if I make a mistake, I'm like, I literally had one job. So it's in the moment really uncomfortable. Again, not a big enough word to describe the feeling, but an interesting byproduct of that I didn't realize until these mistakes started happening. And I will say that this is maybe contextual in terms of the whoever you find yourself with, because I think this, well, I don't know, but in my experience, this happens when you're around people that you feel safe with, I suppose, in a musical situation. Well, and a life situation, you'd hope. But when I've made mistakes in a situation where it's with a very supportive group of people, it has never, ever been met with any sort of negativity. It may be met with like laughter, because it's like, you made a mistake, because it's unusual, which is a compliment in a weird way. But also I think it creates connection with the other musicians, because we're all going to make mistakes. And to have that moment of like making a mistake and allowing that vulnerability with the other musicians to be there with you, just going, it's all right. Like, whether it's laughing at you and making it lighthearted, like, it's not a big deal, come on. Or whether it's like, it's fine, like, I make mistakes, which is what I had that. Or when I remember making a really particular mistake. So I was playing, it was the Voice Kids, we were playing Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. And obviously that is quite a specific drum beat, right? And it's literally the one thing throughout the whole thing, I think, if I can remember right. Oh my God, my brain. And for some reason, I know what happened. And again, this comes back to like an episode that I did before. I remember as this kind of drum break, which is literally just the drums and the vocals was coming up, I don't know why, I suddenly became really hyper aware of what my limbs were doing. Now, bear in mind, this was the record day that we were recording. This was going to go out on TV. And for some reason, my body just decided to do something completely different to what the actual part was. And I was like, what happened? Oh my God. And I sort of like got back to what I was meant to be doing. And the musical director kind of looked at me like, oh, okay. And anyway, we carried on. And at the end I was like, oh my God, Dave, I'm so sorry. I made such a mistake there. I don't know what happened. Like, and he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, what? I mean, it was just, what was I doing? What did I do? And then he was just like, I just thought you just did something different. Like, you just fancied doing, like, changing it up. I thought it sounded great. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's kind of like this thing of one person's mistake is another person's bit of creativity, should we say. And that's how he heard it. There was another time, again, on that gig, I think, like, I can literally count and remember all of the mistakes that I made on that gig. I mean, I'm proud to say I could probably count them on one hand, but even so, they were devastating at the time. And it was the same for other musicians in the band. Like, if they made a mistake, like, you could see the internal turmoil of like beating themselves up in that moment and then just having to carry on, especially if we're recording, whatever. But the other thing that would happen was, if I made a mistake, let's say I made a mistake and it was like, yeah, we'll sort that out. It would be met with, it's all right. I've made loads of mistakes on this gig. Like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, and you become more human, and there is a connection to be had in that moment. Now, I'm not saying obviously go out there and make mistakes on purpose. I do believe in having a high level of competency to work from, to, whatever the right word is. I'll give you all the words. You pick the one that's right, because right now my brain, it's still waking up, I think. But yeah, so I think that kind of acceptance of like, right, mistakes will happen, and being open to that, it creates a sense of relaxation as well, because it's the other thing. Like, when you're so fearful of making mistakes, you bring a tense energy, I think. I know I bring, or have brought in the past, not so much now, I don't think, a tense, edgy energy to a situation. And I don't mean it in a good way, not like a cool, edgy way. No, I mean like a eggshelly. It feels a bit eggshelly, maybe. And maybe that's my own perception, but you know, if you are so edgy and rigid in the fact that you don't want to make a mistake, it makes, you know, it does translate to the people around you, whether people know why. they're feeling a bit, they might not know, but I am convinced that once you accept this idea of making mistakes, there's a flow that comes with that between the people. And again, it's this kind of trust and supportiveness and vulnerability. And say you do make a mistake, maybe someone else will pick it up from you, as in like they'll have you, you know, you feel safe. They will catch you when you fall. And it just makes it more organic, I suppose, and you can truly grow, you can be honest. I don't know, it's really hard to describe if you haven't sort of experienced it, but I think it's really I think it really translates to just life generally as well, and just having the ability to just make mistakes in life, not have to be right. I'm just looking out the window, there is a plane with 3 wings. I'm sure that I should know what that's called, because I'm sure that wow, that's really amazing. Very old school. Very old school. Anyway, sorry, getting distracted. I don't know whether you think this. I think I might have some form of slight ADHD, because I often do get kind of like distracted. But anyway, let's get back to this. So I think that leaning into kind of mistakes is a really great way to, I think, connect more with the music you're playing, the other musicians in the band, and by extension the audience that you're playing in front of. And I think once you accept that mistakes are going to happen, and not only that, I think they're a beneficial thing. They're not, and again, not to say that you should strive to make mistakes, but I think there needs to be a relaxation. Look, you cannot plan for everything anyway, so why not just do what is acceptable, do the logical, you know, learn the songs, obviously, and be comfortable enough with them that you can play them, but you don't need to think about, well, what if I play this wrong and then this happens, how would I get out of that, how would I do this, you know, if this happens. Again, this was my life for so long. I would obsess over working out everything that could go wrong, and working out what I would do. And again, it had its benefits. There were things that went wrong, and it meant that I was able to hold down the fort, which was great. But, you know, from a getting the job done perspective, however, in terms of the stress I was holding in my body for the whole time, that probably was projecting to other people as well. You know, there was a seriousness that I definitely brought to every gig, up until fairly recently, probably the last 6 years. There was a certain seriousness, and it was definitely this fear of making a mistake, and whether that was musically, maybe that was with the artist saying the wrong thing, all this sort of stuff. Whereas now, do you know what? I just can't be bothered. I'm just like, you know what? It's fine. And I wanted to share with you the kind of things that, the solutions I have, that when I find myself getting fearful about making a mistake, because I still have it, of course I do, I'm human. I tried to tell myself certain things. So the first thing is that, and again, you know how I'm like dramatic, by the way, apologies if I seem quite stiff. It's because I managed to do my back in the other day. I'd love to tell you I was doing something rock and roll. No, I was getting up from the computer. That was it. And I was like, oh no! It was just, I was sitting on a weird chair, and welcome to 37. All right, awesome. But anyway, and again, actually, this does sort of lean into that fear of making a mistake, as it were. And what I mean by that is making the mistake of moving into a position where my back would hurt or spasm. So before, this has happened, probably, I think this is the 4th time in my life, but the last one time was like 2 and a bit years ago, I think, something like that. And when it happened that time, I really tried to avoid that pain, making the mistake of that pain, like creating the spasms from happening. And I really believe that it made it take longer to heal, which makes sense to me. Whereas this time I took a different tact, and when I could feel that it was about to spasm, instead of trying to avoid it, I didn't lean into it, but I didn't lean out of it, if that makes sense. And I just kind of breathed through it instead, and tried to relax the whole of my body and just accept it. And actually, the spasms that then happened, the pain that then happened, was never that bad. It was never as bad as trying to avoid it, because trying to avoid it just would send me into a state of stress, and it would make it so much worse. Now, I'm sure if there's anyone listening that has any sort of like medical background or biological understanding, I'm not sure that's the right word. Anyway, yeah, I'm sure that you're like, yes, this is very documented, that's very logical. But anyway, I didn't know. But it does kind of feed into this idea of like the fear of making the mistake is bigger than and makes it worse, rather than just actually leaning into it or accepting it. Accept the mistake and go from that point. And like I say before, when I did my back in, I think it was at least 4 days, I think I was laid up, like properly couldn't move. Whereas this time I was up and about. Yeah, it was painful. I was trying to walk around slowly. I was laid up a little bit, don't get me wrong, but this is day 3, I think, or day 4, I don't know. And I'm walking about, and it's kind of fine. There's just a few twinges here and there and a bit of stiffness, and that's kind of all right. Anyway, sorry, you didn't want to know about my back issues, but here we are. What can I say? So let's get back to the things I tell myself when I get fearful about making mistakes. So the first thing that I think about is I just go, right, the reality is if I make a mistake, nobody's going to die. It's music. It's music. No one's going to die. Someone might be upset. Oh well. Oh well. We'll get by it. Like, we'll get through it. It's absolutely fine. And so that's kind of my first thing. It's like, it's not that deep. No one's going to die. It's all good. Let's move on. What's the very worst that can happen? That's one of my favourite things to ask myself. What's the very worst that can happen? You can make one mistake and then they chuck you off a gig. Well, first of all, that seems pretty unlikely and pretty unreasonable. And if they do chuck you off a gig for making one mistake, no, you probably don't want to be around that situation. That sounds stressful as anything, and like, there's other work, there's other gigs. It's not the only gig. It might seem like it, but it's not. There'll always be a way around things, like, as long as you try. So the other thing that I did and do is I tried to do experiments to kind of debunk the heaviness that I was putting on making mistakes. So I would, I'm not sure I should be admitting this, but here we are. I would purposefully under-prepare for certain situations, and what I mean is not for gigs. No, that's the job bit. But, well, so are rehearsals. But the point is, rehearsals, I used to feel like I needed to be at this perfect point for rehearsals, and that, everything had to be sorted, and including knowing everything that's going to go wrong and then what I would do about it. But instead, I was like, all right, let me try and do my version of under-preparing for rehearsals, because, and again, I would reframe rehearsals as like, for some reason, since I was young, I had in my head that everything, like I say, had to be perfect for rehearsals. That needs to be the finished product. But actually, rehearsals are to rehearse. They're to rehearse it up. They're to make it good together. It's meant to be a collaborative thing. It's not just to rock up and play through everything and go, right, done, see you later. It's things are going to change, and they should change. And, it's that sort of thing. So reframing it that actually, if I do slightly under-prepare, again, to my own level, which is still probably too over-prepared, but it allows space for magic. And once I reframed rehearsals in that way, it took the pressure off me. I think I came at it with a much more relaxed attitude, which definitely translated to the relationships in the room, and the work that we were doing together. There was a lot more laughter and lightness and enjoyability. No, I don't think I can get away with that. It was more enjoyable. The other thing that I would often do this, like, if I was feeling myself going, oh my gosh, I'm really worried about making a mistake and getting chucked off a gig, say, I would think about other people that have made mistakes on that gig. But not only that, like, bigger mistakes than just hitting a bum note, if you like. There have been, do you know what? I think almost every gig I've been on, there has been at least one sort of person that has been on that gig at some point who has some serious, issues in one way or another. whether that be, I don't know, alcohol related, drug related, behavior related, attitude, I mean, there's a million things. And that not only in itself would not be ideal for a gig in a professional setting, but it would also lead to mistakes being made and unacceptable behavior, should we say. And yet they will have stayed on those gigs for a long time. And it wasn't about making one mistake and they were out, not even slightly. And I would just think about that and go, do you know what? I feel like I'm a nice person. I know I always have the best intentions in every situation I go into in my life. I know, as long as I know that my intentions are good, I think everything else I just can deal with. And I will make mistakes. I have made mistakes. But I know that my intentions were good. So therefore, it's like, I can't be perfect. And actually, perfect is boring. And also, like I say, there's something about making mistakes and having a shared experience of imperfection, if you like, that really connects you to other people. Weirdly, I think that's a big reason why people connect so well with this podcast, is that it's essentially me just telling you all the mistakes that I've made and trying to not make you feel so alone and hopefully helping you in some way, because I've made mistakes along every step of the way, like every step of the way. And do you know what? It's fine. It's actually fine. And again, we can take this wider. We can take this to relationships, for instance. Like, bad things will happen, mistakes will happen, but it's how you deal with them that I think is the important thing. And if you do put this onus on, if I make a mistake, I have failed, and therefore my move would often be, I'm retreating from this situation. And honestly, that can be professionally, that can be personally. And rather than leaning into it and exploring it, allowing it to happen, having a conversation with the other person, let's say if it's in a relationship situation, I would run away and I would shut down. And that leads to a lack of connection, which is not great for music. And also it leads to you shutting down the connection to yourself, I think. No, I know, because that's where I was at for so long. But let me tell you, I'm in such a good place now, where, it's hard. Mistakes happen. You have to address them. It is painful. But the other side of that pain is definitely, like I say, it's more connection to yourself, your instrument, the people around you that you're playing with. It makes the whole thing richer. It makes the relationships that you have with other musicians stronger. And the foundations are just so much stronger if you kind of don't shy away from those mistakes. Just accept they're going to happen and accept that you will be able to deal with them. And yes, the worst thing might happen, but at least you know that you can gain a stronger relationship with yourself. Because that's the other thing. Mistakes are also information. Because at the end of the day, even if, let's just take it down base level. If you do make a mistake, it might be as simple as there's a skill that you don't quite have yet. Well, then you just need to work on that further. But in the process of that, you can talk to the people that are in the room at the same time, see if maybe they can offer some insight into how to get better at that thing. Or, as I say, none of us are perfect. We can't do everything. It's impossible. It's physically impossible, and that's okay. And that is what's going to make you beautiful as a player. It really is. Like, the strengths that you have will make you beautiful, but also the vulnerabilities that you have. It informs the way that you will play things. It will inform how you perform. It will inform how you connect with other people. And I think connection is everything. I'm just getting convinced about this. Like, the longer I go on in this life, connection is everything. And you have to make mistakes, because perfection is not connection. It's not. And it's boring. It's so dull. It's so dull. If you want a rich experience in playing music, in life, don't be scared of the mistakes. Embrace them. They make it interesting. Might make it uncomfortable, but let me tell you, it's still interesting. Definitely interesting. Anyway, I hope that this sort of talking on the subject has helped you in some way and given you some insight in kind of how I deal with it. And like I say, even if you just feel seen and it makes you feel a little less scared of mistakes, weirdly I'm trying to embrace them more, like, as not make more, but just, I think it's an ongoing process, and that's okay. but you're not alone in it if you are feeling this. However, if you are listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I've never made a mistake, let me tell you, this is the other thing about mistakes. It means that you're probably on the edge of your comfort zone, which is awesome. Go there. Go there. That's growth, baby. That is where the growth is. And yeah, I'd highly suggest that if you're not making mistakes, you need to be pushing yourself more. 100%. That's the other thing. Probably should have made more of a point of that, really, because that actually is really important. That is what mistakes are. They are markers. Markers for growth. Potential growth, if you choose to go there, or markers for boundaries. And I like breaking boundaries. I don't like having things that restrict me anymore. It's not fun. I'm going to face them, and that is what I choose to do. You choose what you want to do. It's up to you, absolutely. But that is what I will be doing. Where's that from? That is what I will be doing. It's either from, well, of course, it's either from a series or a film. Anyway, if you know what that reference is, please tell me, because, yeah, that is what I will be doing. Anyway, right. I'm going to love you and leave you. If you want any help one-on-one with any of this sort of stuff that I talk about, you can now get some coaching from me. I offer a couple of different programs currently. So whether you're looking to get into the session musician world, I can help you with that. Or whether you're already in the professional world and you want some general support, I can also do that. So yeah, if you just get in touch with me either over on Instagram, or if you go, just search for emilydrums.com anywhere, or go on to emilydrums.com, you will find me. And yeah, just reach out, let's have a chat. I want to know more about you. But thank you for listening, and thank you to Mike Tuppen for kind of inspiring this episode, and also all the other, there were a lot of other people that kind of let me into their vulnerabilities when it comes to making mistakes. It turns out, yes, it is a very common thing. It is. There were multiple people that were talking to me about it. And yeah, I don't feel like anyone's really talking about the importance of it, really. But anyway, I love you. I'm going to leave you. I hope that you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever you're up to. And I shall see you next time for another episode. All right, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
It's